What's going on, everybody? It's Attorney Nick here, and today we're going to talk about Microsoft's response to the FTC's Activision Blizzard lawsuit. On December 22nd, Microsoft filed its written response to the FTC, that's the Federal Trade Commission's lawsuit to block the company's acquisition of video game publisher Activision Blizzard, known famously for its franchise Call of Duty and apps like Candy Crush. Now, by way of background, if you watched my other two videos on this topic, on this lawsuit, you know that earlier this month, the FTC sued to block Microsoft's $68.7 billion acquisition of game developer Activision Blizzard. The FTC has filed a lawsuit before an administrative law judge instead of in a federal court, and it claims that there is a fear that Microsoft, if this deal is allowed to go through, will make games like Call of Duty and other Activision Blizzard titles that are on multiple consoles, including Sony's PlayStation 5. It'll make those games exclusive to the Xbox to drive sales away from Sony and to its own console, the Xbox. On December 22nd, Microsoft fired back at the FTC by filing a 37-page written response. Now, this is required by law. Otherwise, it has waived any of its defenses. But Microsoft, in its response, argues that the deal should go through for a number of reasons. So we see here in Microsoft's response, it says, quote, "Ultimately, the commission cannot meet its burden of showing that the transaction would leave consumers worse off because the transaction will allow consumers to play Activision's games on new platforms and access them in new and more affordable ways. The relief sought in the complaint should be denied." In response to the FTC's concerns about Microsoft making Call of Duty series exclusive to the Xbox, Microsoft has pledged to keep Call of Duty on competitors' platforms for at least 10 years. And I'll show you in the response where Microsoft states, here it states, Microsoft has offered to keep Call of Duty on PlayStation from the moment this deal was announced. Xbox's proposal, and then it's redacted, would extend for 10 years, an unheard of length for contracts in the gaming industry. And then it accuses Sony of refusing this deal. So basically, Xbox here is arguing where it says Xbox also believes it is good business to make Activision's limited portfolio of popular games more accessible to consumers by putting them on more platforms and making them more affordable. That includes making Call of Duty not platform exclusive. So in other words, it's saying, why would we, Microsoft, make Call of Duty, this wildly popular game, exclusive to the Xbox when that would severely hurt its revenue stream? On page 3, we see Microsoft making itself appear to be at a competitive disadvantage to Sony and Nintendo by stating that although few companies have outsized influence in the video game industry, Xbox is not one of them. Xbox's console lags behind Sony's and Nintendo's. While Xbox publishes games for consoles and PCs, it has far fewer popular exclusive games than Sony and Nintendo. And Xbox has also almost no presence in mobile gaming, which is the largest and fastest growing segment of gaming. One thing that I predicted in my previous videos, if you watch them, was that Microsoft would try to reframe the relevant market from the high-end console industry to a larger market like mobile gaming apps where it has virtually no presence in. And under that definition of relevant market, under the antitrust laws, it appears far more competitive than what the FTC is framing, which is this two-company Sony versus Microsoft high-end console market, which is less competitive because there are only really two major players in it. And if you reframe the relevant video game market as including mobile apps, which Microsoft is doing here, it seems like Microsoft is at a major competitive disadvantage to its rival companies. It says, for example, on page 4 of the response, Microsoft is buying Activision to meet the billions of gamers who choose to play on mobile devices instead of a console or PC, and to learn how to make games that appeal to and engage them. So basically, Microsoft here is reframing the relevant markets from what the FTC has framed, which is this two companies, Sony versus Microsoft, high-end console market, to no, the video game market is far broader than that. The relevant market that we should be looking at is mobile apps, games on PCs, games on any kind of device that you can imagine. And when defined in that way, the relevant market is far broader than how the FTC has framed it. And therefore, Microsoft is actually a small player in a much larger pond. Now, I'm not sure if the administrative law judge that will ultimately decide this case in August of next year will go for that argument, but it is an interesting one and is certainly one that I predicted they would make in my last video if you go and watch that. Now, one other defense that Microsoft has made that I thought was pretty interesting is attacking the FTC directly under the Constitution, saying that this whole procedure is unconstitutional under a variety of amendments and constitutional provisions within our United States Constitution. So if we look on page 34 of Microsoft's complaint, paragraph 17, we see that the Microsoft attorneys, they are accusing the FTC of violating Articles 2 of the U.S. Constitution and separation of powers with this lawsuit, Article 3 of the U.S. Constitution and the separation of powers, Article 3, here we go, by having the violating the equal protection under the Fifth Amendment, violating Microsoft's right to procedural due process under the Due Process Clause of the Fifth Amendment, violating the Fifth Amendment due process right to adjudication before a neutral arbiter. So lots of constitutional arguments in there, and this is a hot topic before the Supreme Court. It'll be interesting to see where this goes if Microsoft is willing to take this potentially all the way to the Supreme Court to decide this separation of powers issue and this administrative power versus the Article 3 power. It'll be very interesting for a law nerd like myself. I like these legal arguments, and I'm curious to see if Microsoft is willing to go to the mat, so to speak, on these articles and take them all the way up through the appeals process if it loses and if necessary. So anyways, that's all I've got for you today. If you like this video, let me know by giving it a like. If you want to see more content like this on the FTC versus Microsoft lawsuit, let me know by hitting the subscribe button and leaving a comment below. And of course, as always, thank you for watching.